Hello and welcome everyone to the course preview for the 2018 Glass Blown Open layout of Peter Pan Park. We're going to go ahead and kick this off on hole 1. Hole 1 is a 375-foot par 3 with an OB baseball field down the right side. To go for the birdie, the shot is usually a big hyzer over the fence, but that brings the OB into play. If the drive lands OB, it's tricky to get up and down being pinned up against the fence. Otherwise, the safe play is a straight shot and then an approach for your easy 3. This is one of those holes that looks simple, but that fence on the right of the tee seems a lot bigger from the tee pad. Hole 2 is a 348-foot par 3 that plays a lot longer because it's uphill. There is a big hyzer out and around everything, but the farthest throwers might be able to get there. Everyone else is just going to play a straight driver up the tunnel. Because of the slant to the ground, it's hard to tell how close the drive is, and it's really hard to go past the basket. No OB to worry about here, but it does take a really good shot to be inside the circle off the tee. Hole 3 is a 330-foot par 3 that plays downhill for most of the way, but then jumps back up at the end. The danger is getting the tee shot too high and hitting the low branches on the right or hyzering out early into the bushes. The tricky part here is getting left at the end, so most people will go with a faster driver just for the skip. Again, no OB to worry about, but it is a tricky birdie to get. Hole 4 is 365 feet and also plays as a par 3. There is a Mando way on the right side to protect everyone on hole 5's tee pad, and the drop zone is about halfway down the fairway. The bushes on the right can come into play for a turned over drive, and the big tree in the middle is the biggest obstacle for the straight shot. Most people will throw right up the gut with a fairway or distance driver and hope for not too much skip left into those trees. This green is very fast, so angle control coming in on your approach shots is very important. Hole 5 is a 395-foot par 3, and it's probably the trickiest tee shot on the course. There's a window off the tee, but plenty of branches waiting to knock an errant drive into the OB creek. An aggressive shot is a straight shot with something fast. The safe option is just a straight, overstable driver that will fade into the open area on the left. The short tee pad is the drop zone that will be used for any OB drives. Hole 6 is a 335-foot par 3 that plays uphill with a low ceiling, so it's a very tricky tee shot. There is a Mando on the right side to take the big hyzer out of play, so most people will go with an air shot, but the roller up the middle is in play as well. The hardest part is getting to the green without getting knocked down by the branches. The drop zone is pretty far back where the Mando tree is, so there's still some work left to save a 4 with the uphill and low ceiling still in play. Hole 7 is also a par 3 and plays 332 feet. And it's the simplest hole so far. Right-handed throwers can take a big backhand hyzer with a driver. There is OB in the water past the basket, but this hole plays sneaky long, so it's not a huge concern on the tee. The green has 3 big trees around the basket, which can actually make putting a lot harder the closer your drive gets to the basket. Hole 8 is the signature Monkey Island hole. It's a 350-foot par 3 island, and it takes about 300 feet of power to reach the island. Most people will throw right at the pole to the right of the island and let their disc fade in. The island is longer than it is narrow, so it's better to miss either short or long than left or right. The grass in the green is pretty thick, so there's not too much worry about skips. A good tee shot is nice and high to be sure that you get up and over the wall and into the island. It's a fairly large island, but a drive that does miss the island is going to the drop zone about 100 feet short of the basket on the sidewalk. Hole 9 is a 310-foot par 3 that plays a little bit downhill, and you've got plenty of options off the tee. The forehand around the trees, a straight mid-range up the tunnel, or a backhand hyzer for the really daring players. Throwing the big hyzer does bring the OB road down the right side into play, so the safest option is the tunnel shot up the middle. The bushes on the left aren't fun to put out with, so keep your driver straight and don't let it fade out early. Hole 10 is a 256-foot par 3 with OB short and left. The shot is usually a putter through the gap, hoping it lands softly and doesn't skip left into the water. The sidewalk is safe, but the Monkey Island is not. The most common mistake is hitting the big, leaning tree and kicking left into the island. Hole 10 is a gotta-get birdie. Hole 11 is another short but tricky par 3 at 260 feet. The basket is right next to the creek and the ground slants down towards the OB. The road on the right is OB as well, but the sidewalk is safe. The safest shot is a forehand because the road is pretty far to the right, but that does leave a scary putt towards the OB water. Hole 12 is the infamous peninsula hole. It's a 321-foot par 3 that plays out to a 20-foot wide peninsula with OB water all around it. Going OB off the tee means going to the drop zone out at the end of the peninsula. The safe shot is a forehand because once the drive gets past the bushes, it's fairly open. Putting on this green is tricky as well because the ground is sloped towards the water. Any putt that's rolling is probably going OB. Hole 13 is the first par 4 and plays 450 feet. The first shot is a touchy placement shot looking to land short of the water and left of the trees on the right side of the fairway. Looks fairly simple from the tee pad, but the ground is fast, so what looks like a good drive can skip OB fairly easily. From there, it's an anhyzer or a forehand approach to the green and a fairly open putt. The last tree is bigger than it looks and the basket is farther away from the water than you'd think. It's around 60 feet from the OB, so a rollaway putt is probably still going to stay safe. Hole 14 is a 401-foot par 3 playing a little bit uphill. From the tee pad, the basket looks closer than it is, so coming up short is fairly common. The preferred shot is a right-handed hyzer that flies fairly straight and fades towards the basket. The real danger is fading into the big trees on the left side. From in there, it leaves a very tricky approach, and they can come into play on the green as well. Most people are going to grab their go-to overstable driver, crush it out to the right, and let it skip towards the basket for a birdie putt. Hole 15 is a 393-foot downhill par 3. It's usually a forehand or a turnover fairway driver because the downhill makes it play a bit shorter than the tee sign says. There is OB down the entire right side and behind the basket. The safe shot is to aim for the big tree to the left of the basket and keep all that nastiness on the right side out of play. The green doesn't have too much to worry about, so the emphasis here is definitely on the drive. Hole 16 is a 515-foot par 3. This is the only time on the course for the big arms to really unload on a drive. There's OB on the right side all the way down and OB long that pinches in on the green. The safe play is a slight turnover as far down the fairway as possible, then a nice soft approach. The big arms can go for a birdie, but OB makes the tee shot extremely difficult. Hole 17 is a 272-foot downhill par 3. It shapes really well for a forehand until the green. The most common mistake is to swing a drive too high or too wide and bring the trees on the left side of the fairway into play. The slope to the right means the forehand has a very high likelihood to skip down towards the OB. The backhand turnover is an option as well, but full commitment is required to not flatten out and go long or left. Hole 18 is a 480-foot par 3 with lots of trees and lots of OB. The tee shot is all about placement. You want to get yourself as close to the mouth of the corner as possible. If a tee shot gets to the landing zone around 325 feet from the tee pad, the basket is through some trees and around the bushes to the right. If your drive comes up short, it can be tempting to try and shoot over or through the bushes. That will not work, that has never worked, and those who say it's worked are lying. The green has a downhill slope past the basket and OB to the left, so approaches that are on too much of an angle can skip and go OB. So lock in your approach game, get up and down, and end your round at Peter Pan with a nice birdie 3.